Have you ever been in a place of prayer and left there knowing for certain that God has spoken to you about a certain thing? Nothing can shake it off because you know it was not your voice, it was not the voice of anybody that is around you. You knew for certain that this can only be God that said it, and so you hold on to it, only to find out that it wasn't God because it didn't happen or it didn't turn out the way God said that it would. And just sitting in that confusion of wondering, was it God? Was it not God? Did I mishear? What's going on? Well, if you've ever had that experience, that makes both of us, and that's what I want to talk about today. Let's get into it. Just sequel to my last video, I talked about why I left my last relationship and I talked about the lessons that I learned. I also mentioned in that video that there were certain things that made me believe that he was God's choice for me, and I genuinely felt like he was the one, and there were several signs that led to me thinking that he was the one, only for us to break up. So I just came here to do one of the things that I know how to do best, which is to tell stories. I have always been a lover girl. There was a time when I would call myself a ruthless romantic, and a lot of people would call me that. But then as I got to know God and I got to know the power in words, I stopped calling myself a hopeless romantic. I started to call myself a hopeful romantic. So I'd always loved romance, I've always loved love. And of course, as I grew up, I started to learn about the reality of relationships. So it's not like I was naive or oblivious to the fact that relationship is work, and some of the things that you see in the movies or watch in books or in music is not exactly all that it's cooked up to be. And that's not what happens in day-to-day life in relationships. So I was very aware of that. But I was also interested in all that it came with, the romance as well, like as realistically as it could possibly get. But one thing that was a contradiction was I love love. I always wanted to find my own person, meet my own person, and get to express that and show that. But on the other end, I just somewhat was afraid of the commitment, the finality of marriage, because I'm not the person that wants to get married and then get a divorce. So it's a thing where I'm like, there's a love part. I love love, but I'm afraid of getting married. And both of them coexisted at the same time. I also had the idea that the first guy that I give my heart to, because I was very careful about accepting anybody as a relationship, would be my man. Well, that didn't happen. But that's another story for another time. Years came, and I thought that I would finally start to feel ready to get married or warm up to the idea at least. I remember sometimes when I would talk to my mom and she would talk about how it would look like, talk about her grandchildren and all that. And I would tell her that I don't know if I want to get married. And she's like, no way. No child in my house is going to stay single. I got married, I had children. You're going to get married, I'm going to have children. And I would tell her that I'm afraid of marriage. And I didn't know if I want to do that. And she would say, then what you should be praying for is a good marriage, not avoiding it altogether. I wasn't warming up to the idea. 2022, I just felt empty. I felt like something was missing. I had always been a Christian, I'd always known God, but sometimes I'm on fire, sometimes I'm lukewarm. But this time I just could not keep going with the way I was going in my spiritual walk. So I went on a retreat and I told God that if he doesn't want to answer me, then he should just kill me because I'm not leaving this place without him talking to me. And as God would have it, he actually talked to me on the first day. And I kept hearing from him from that day till the very last day of the retreat. It was awesome. It felt like 3 years. The stuff that he downloaded to me, the stuff that he told me, they were so beautiful. His presence felt so real. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him. I was like, how do I leave this place? After the retreat was over, I didn't want to leave. From then on, my spiritual life started to get deeper in a way that I just wanted to do his will. I just wanted him to be Lord over my life in every area. I wanted him to just take preeminence. I wanted his will. I didn't want to do my will. Yes, I have the choice, but I give you the choice. I choose what you choose. So 2023, first quarter of 2023, I was in devotion in the morning and I was just talking to God, basking in his presence, enjoying him. And all of a sudden he asked me a question. What do you think about marriage? And I said, get it behind me, Satan, because I'm like, no, I already told God that I'm enjoying being single and I want to be in a single season. I don't want to talk about marriage. So I thought we had an agreement. So I don't think that it's possible that he may be the one asking me this question. But I heard the question again the second time. And then I heard the question again the third time. At this third time, I'm just like, okay, I can't keep ignoring this question. And let me just indulge this question just in case it's good. Because I knew it can be like I was sure that it's only because I was not thinking about it. So I indulge and I tell him how I feel about marriage, how I'm somewhat scared of it because of all the stories I've heard and all these stories, all the events that I've seen around me from people who are married, with older couples and younger couples, neighbors, and just all of that, and how none of it is enticing enough to make me want to go through that suffering, that enduring shame and humiliation and heartbreak and betrayal, all of that, just to see that I am married. He took his time to tell me about how he created marriage from the beginning, what his original intent was for marriage, and how the way he shared the story, what his intent was. I saw how beautiful it was. I saw that his original idea was beautiful, was sweet. It didn't have all of this chaos and all of this drama and all of this pain that I was scared of. So we started to talk about marriage. So he started to ask me, what if you have this kind of guy? Would you get married? I said yes. He started to ask me, what do you want? Based on all you've seen, what do you now know that you want and what do you now know that you don't want? We can talk about that. So instead of shying away from the idea of marriage, you could just tell me what you want. And so we started talking about that. I got to a point where I told him that he's Lord and I surrender. So if this is something that he wants from me in this season, when I'm choosing to be in a season of singleness, then let his will be done. And then there's this scripture that says that delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. I had meditated on the scripture so much that I knew that what that would mean is you delight yourself in the Lord so much that he's giving you the desires of your heart. Because the desires of your heart is his own desires, it's aligned with his will. So I told him, if this is what you desire, then I'll take it. And from that day going forward, I started to have the desire to get married, to be partnered up, and all. And just immediately, I started getting led to different people that were talking on marriage. I was led to a prayer platform where they pray for your future marriage and your future spouse. I also was led to do a fast that was for a prolonged period of time, I think 21 days, if I'm not mistaken, and several others. So every week we would have this prayer for your marriage and your partner and all that. And I started to just hear that there's going to be an avalanche of marriages, of kingdom marriages precisely. And I felt, is it a coincidence that this is coming up now that God is talking to me about marriage, his intent for marriage and all? So I was like, okay, maybe this is what he wants. If this is what he wants, I want it. And I genuinely started to want it. I started to decide. I started to pray about it. I started to fast about it. All of the things that I felt like I needed to be prepared for before this happens. Of course, he also told me about the intent, why he created a woman. So I learned about that as well, what a woman is, how powerful she is as just a woman, as a wife, in the office of a wife and all of that. So I was sure that this is coming very soon. And my dream was to reflect that. I would start to dream of maybe like a wedding bouquet or wedding gowns or being at a wedding. Just, figures and words that just fit into all of this. And not to go in depthly into all of the things I saw because that's not what this video is about. I had a certain dream at some point where I saw a letter that was addressed to me and it was addressed from someone that I have known in the past. I didn't see the name of the person, but from the way it was written, I knew that I had known the person from the past. We may have lost touch, but the person was coming back and the person was talking about how he had missed me and he has stayed away, but he feels that it's time for him to come back and he hopes that I would accept him. And I woke up and I started to write this down because I actually get information from my dreams as well. So I started to write it down that, hey, maybe this partner is going to be someone that I've known before. And then I go on this fast for about 21 days or so. After this fast, just a day later, this guy that I've known 7 years prior texted me. And I didn't even think about it, but he had an issue that he wanted to talk about and he couldn't think of anyone else to share it with but me. So I remember staying up for 2 hours or even more, just trying to understand what was going on. Like he just was vulnerable and just wanted to share a lot of things that was, happening to him. And I was able to advise him the best way I could and encourage him and all. And that ended. Then the new year began, 2024, and he started to drop hints of he would just jokingly call me his wife and say he was joking. Then when he couldn't hold it in, he just straight up told him that okay, actually he has suddenly just been ready for marriage and I've been the one on his mind. Now, if you had watched last week's video, you know the whole story of how we dated in the past 7 years before and then he came back and all of that. So I'm not going to go into that. But somewhere in the relationship, I start to feel emotionally unsafe. I start to get nervous. I start to walk on eggshells. I start to have emotional outbursts out of nowhere. He starts to get angry, and his anger would be so heavy. For example, I spilled this tea, right? And of course, you can get annoyed that why would you spill this on the floor? But his anger would not be proportionate to the tea that spilled on the floor. It would be like he caught me probably in the act of adultery or something. That kind of anger. So it's the kind of anger that I felt like if there's anything bigger than this that I would do because I'm a human being and I'm going to vex you, not deliberately, I'm still going to annoy you, he might beat me up. That kind of anger. And then on top of that, he would introduce me to his family members one by one, and there would be an aversion to their reception. Now, of course, there were two members of his family that were welcoming, and I felt welcomed by them. But the other people in his family that he would introduce me to would give a standoffish treatment. And I would notice that he would not address it. He would not think that it was important that he clears the air, just in case I'm getting the wrong idea. There would be no explanation. He would not even notice. I would have to point it out, and then he would make up his story. And at some point, when I start seeing I'm bothered that they don't like him, then he would say that I just don't like his family, instead of explaining what the issue is. And then it gets to starting to argue whenever I greet a neighbor, I meet a neighbor, like the guy outside, and I greet him, talk to him for 5 minutes, then I'm hedging or I'm cheating, or he's not comfortable with that, or stuff like that. Like then we start fighting over that. Then from there it gets to us having a conversation, and he's saying his own perspective and I say mine, and he starts to contort his face in an annoyed way, like he's not happy that I have an opinion. Only for me to find out later on that he felt like I knew too much, and me knowing too much was going to impede on his leadership, because he would want someone who was a little less knowledgeable so that he would be able to feel more superior enough to lead me. And someone that just goes with whatever his opinion is, like yes sir and all, without airing their own view and us talking it through. We also started to not be able to fight well. So you can have arguments, you definitely will. I have arguments with my siblings and I grew up with them. Yes, we still have arguments. But we argue, we fight well, we reconcile, we talk it through and we move on. But we will not be able to argue well. There will just always be fights and chaos and fight, and we'll reconcile, and within that reconciliation, 3 hours later we are fighting. Stuff like that. So I started to wonder. Everything pointed to this guy. This guy came at the exact time that God started talking to me about marriage, and he had a lot of characteristics that I wanted on paper. He was also a guy that would say that he wanted to marry me, and I would not cringe or feel scared, and I would imagine what us being married would look like, and I would be excited about it. So everything seemed like he was the one. It was confusing. I had to go back to God, because I mean, I thought you told me this was the guy, so why is he acting like this? Of course, I'm not saying I'm perfect, so maybe he might say his own side of the story. Whatever it is I probably have done. I already mentioned one, which is that he said I need so much, and so it will impede on his leadership. Another was that he said that I was not grateful for the stuff he was doing. At the time, he was trying to get me to come to the US on a study visa, and he was handling that financially. So whenever I would bring up how I was feeling emotionally unsafe, it would always be about, but I'm helping you out financially, and I don't think you're appreciative enough. I had several ways of being appreciative. I had written him mails and texts on how appreciative I was, but for some reason it just wasn't enough. Or he would get angry because I didn't compliment him in the way that he prefers to be complimented. That's in his mind that he had never shared with me. It was just a lot all of a sudden. My antenna was going off now. Sometimes I would disappear for a few hours just to cool off, because I just did not want to argue. Or when I would have a full day and I would start to cut out some parts of it that I will share with him and not share the other part, because I'm afraid of sharing that part and then we're going to argue, or he's going to accuse me of something. And you know this thing where we pray that, oh Lord, if he's not the one, please take him away. Yeah, that was what I decided to do. And I prayed, oh Lord, if he's not the one, please take him away. He didn't leave. He was still there. He did not leave. This is the point where I tell you that that prayer that you say that works almost immediately, at some point will stop working, depending on the level of responsibility that God has given to you. Maybe He has decided that you should not suspend your brain, and you should use your brain to check what you're seeing and see whether that's His perfect will for you. It took me a while to get here, but eventually I started to realize that God did not take him away because He felt like I had the ability to do it. He's like, I've given you brain. I've told you my plans for you, of peace and not of evil. I've told you that my blessings, they make rich and add no sorrow. You know my word, you do something about it. You can see the signs. I've opened your eyes to see the signs. He's even manifesting the signs. Like, you didn't have to get married to him and find out. Even though he's like 7 cities away in the US and you're in Nigeria, you can still see the signs all the way from here. And I think that is me already making it clear to you that you should break up. But it's not adding up because, well, you said this is my year of marriage. And this guy, I don't know any other guy from the past. This is the guy. Like, what's going on here? Well, I stayed longer. Let me just drink myself. I still stayed, but then there was one day I was reading the book of, I'm not even so sure, I would put it on the screen if I remember. I think it was Mecca or something. And it said, arise, for this is not your rest. That was it. I just knew that this relationship was over. But it broke my heart because it took me a year of praying and fasting and studying and waiting and now having the desires only for it to show up and not be it. I didn't take it well. It actually has taken me a year to even get here. And even from time to time, I still wonder what the point was. Like, I keep asking, what was the point? So the question is, did God actually tell me that this is the one? Or did I imagine that? To be honest, this is not the place you're going to get a direct answer or a clear answer, because I also don't know the answer. But I have a few speculations and a few ideas. Number one is that he could have been the one. Now, first of all, there is a kind for you, and it's possible that he was a kind of the one. But when we got into the relationship, we were not able to work it out. Behaviors, attitudes, preparations that were not done, flaws, and all started to show. Pride and blindness and inability to work things through can make what God actually wants for you, that was initially supposed to be it, not to do it anymore. So you can actually spoil the plan. Now, I don't think you can completely destroy God's plan, but you can spoil the one that should have happened in March and make it get to the next one in October, something like that. So he may have been the one at the time, but because of certain things that we could not walk through, he couldn't be the one anymore. Number two, he may not have been the one, but the counterfeits, because that is also a thing. God may have told me something for a season, and because the spiritual activity around that time heightened, the enemy could have seen that, oh, I'm waiting for this, and before the right one comes and she gets it great, let's send her the wrong one. So he may not have been the one. Maybe there is another I should have been waiting for that hasn't come yet. Number three is that I probably did not even hear God at all. It may not have been my emotions I heard because I'm certain that that's not something I would have thought at that time. But you can hear the voice of lying vanity. There's a scripture that talks about how a spirit volunteered to go and deceive the prophets in Israel at the time, and only one prophet was going to tell the truth and the rest were going to lie. So they can actually be the voice of lying vanity that could have ministered to me because I had heightened activity. Any voice could have spoken to me at the time and it may not have been God. In summary, it didn't work out with us. So that just means that at the end of the day, he's not the one. And so I have to be to another. But this is just to be relatable, just so that the person that sees this, whenever you see this, knows that you're not the only person who may have thought that God said something only to find out that it wasn't true, or only to find out that you don't hear well. Or maybe you heard well, but you were not grown enough, you were not responsible enough, or the other person was not responsible enough, or both of you were not responsible enough to do what it takes for it to be the one. And even if it's not about marriage, it could have been about any other thing. Maybe it was mishandled, maybe the opportunity was not discerned and it was missed or something. And also, the fact that you ask God, if this person is not the one, please take him away or take her away. And you don't need, does not necessarily mean that they are now the one. You could have grown in your faith, in your walk with God, that you're no longer a baby Christian. Maybe you're a teenager, a young adult, or a grown adult in your walk with God. And so whom much is given, much is expected. So you have reached a level of accountability where God allows you to use wisdom to make a choice. So just because you prayed, if he's not the one, take him away, and he doesn't go away, does not mean that he's now suddenly the one. It means that you should also use your eyes. You should also know that God has given you eyes to see, ears to hear, heart to discern. And if your peace regulator is going off and you're no longer at peace like you used to, and you can see signs that are going iffy, then they're still not the one and you gotta do what you gotta do. So that's will be all for this video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, love you guys. Stay golden. Bye.